Good morning, welcome to a licensing panel. The first item on the for the day is we need to nominate a chair for the hearing. Could I have a nomination, please?
Yeah, could I nominate Councillor Anne, please?
And a seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We'll just start by a round of introductions. I'm Councillor Amin and I will be chairing today's meeting.
Tahir Hanif, Legal Advisor.
I'm Nicola Sylvester, I'm the Principal Governance Officer.
Can I ask officers?
Hello, I'm Fiona Goldsmith, I'm the Group Leader for Licensing.
Good morning, Anwar Butt, Licensing Officer.
Thank you. Just ask the applicant. And can I ask any objectors? Can you just press the green button? Well, not the green button, the one underneath to speak.
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Javier Santana, resident of Slathwaite.
John Ellart, resident of Slathwaite.
Sarah Young, resident of Slathwaite.
Harry McCarthy, Councillor for Colne Valley Ward.
Councillor Beverley Addy for Colne Valley Ward.
Thank you. Just remind everybody that today's meeting is webcast, and could everyone please put their phones on silent or switch them off so we're not disturbed. Can I ask everyone if they've received a copy of the licensing hearing procedure which explains how the hearing will be conducted and if they've read and understood it? Thank you. So I will now go through the formal agenda. Just confirm a site visit's been done. I think there's no apologies.
No, thank you.
And if we can look at the previous meetings, officers have confirmed that it's an accurate reflection of the last 3 meetings, and neither they nor myself have been made aware of any changes being required. Can someone confirm that? Can we have a seconder?
I can confirm.
None received, Chair.
Admission of the public?
It's held in public.
And deputations and petitions?
None received, Chair.
Public questions?
None received, Chair.
Sorry. We will now move on to the application for the grant of a new premises licence at Silent Woman, Nabs Lane in Slathwaite. Can I just invite officers to present their case?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to inform members of an application for the grant of a premises licence. 14 representations have been received and is therefore referred to panel for determination. I don't know if it's been mentioned, there is a video accompanying some of the representations, so I'd just like to make that clear from the beginning. With regard to the application was received on the 27th of June of this year at the Silent Woman Hotel at Nabs Lane at Slathwaite, HD7 5AU. A copy of the application and plan are attached to Appendix A of this pack. With regard to the licensable activities, they are included in the pack, but for the benefit of this panel, we have the retail sale of alcohol. It wasn't clearly specified on the application whether it was on or off the premises. The days and hours are Sunday to Thursday, 11 a.m. to 2300 hours, Friday, Saturday, 11 till midnight. Now, the application does include some deregulated activities, which there is information in Appendix E about deregulated activities, but as the application stands and was submitted, live music was applied for indoors every day between 9 in the morning and 2300 hours. That does fall within the deregulation sort of side of licensing, so it's not a licensable activity.
Just kind of stop you there. Can you
Yes.
just let us know which page you're reading from?
This is my own summary of the whole application, just to introduce it.
Okay, thank you.
But with regard to the pack, that is 2.1 within your pack. And 2.12 should detail the licensing activities applied for. Also, recorded music's been applied for every day from 9 till midnight. Up to 2300 hours is deregulated. From 2300 hours to midnight would be a licensable activity. The application did specify late night refreshment from every day from 9 to 2300 hours. That is not a licensable activity. Late night refreshment commences for licensable purposes at 2300 hours.
I can't hear what's being said because we're right at the back of the hall and we're on the...
It's just
Can we move? We can't hear. The lady in the white we can't hear particularly. Can we not sit over behind the people here so we can actually hear what's going on?
There are headphones available if you'd prefer headphones.
No, we just need to be able to hear what's going on, really.
I mean, you'll have the same problem when they're speaking over here.
Well, that's for the council to resolve at some later stage.
Well,
You can have some headphones, that means you can hear what's being said.
Yes, please.
Yes, they'd like some.
Two.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Carry on, Chair. Okay. That outlines the licensable activities applied for, and as I've explained, some do fall within the deregulation, and further information about deregulation is at Appendix E. So, a total of 14 representations have been received in respect of the application. There have been no representations from the responsible authorities. Representations consider that the following licensing objectives would not be met should the licence be granted, and that is the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, protection of children from harm. The representations are all attached to Appendix B to this report. The application is for the grant of a new premises licence.
Much better.
These premises have been previously licensed as detailed in the report. Historically, the Silent Woman had a benefit of a premise licence granted under the Justice licences predating the 2003 Licensing Act. On the 5th of October 2005, the licence was converted under the 2003 Licensing Act. At the same time, the application was made to extend the licensed hours. That is detailed in your pack on page 3 of the report or page 15 of the bundle, depending on which you have. Those were the licensable hours for the Silent Woman when it was converted. That was In December 22, the premise licence was transferred. That was the final time it had been transferred over all of the years that it had been licensed, and it was granted premises licence PRA 1062. These hours, as I've said, are detailed in the pack. You can take note of those. Following a history of noise and management issues, on the 11th of October 23, West Yorkshire Police applied under Section 51 of the Licensing Act for a review of the premises licence. Since the review papers were served, the premise licence holder asked to surrender the licence at the time. The matter went before the licensing committee, who accepted the request to surrender the licence and resolved to dismiss the review hearing because, as it had been surrendered, the licence no longer existed. The Silent Woman public house has remained closed from December 22, when that was heard, up until present moment when the application's been received. I did attach a location plan at Appendix C to your report, and as has already been mentioned, a site visit has taken place prior to this hearing. Also in your pack you will see that Appendix D has all the relevant sections of the 182 guidance with regard to the licensing objectives that are of concern. I've also included Appendix E, which refers to deregulated activities under that Act. That's Section 16 of the 182 guidance, which is attached to Appendix E. As I've said, there are circumstances that are no longer licensable, which are live and recorded music, as I've mentioned earlier. Consultations taken place. The application was advertised in consultation with all of the responsible authorities and locals, meeting the requirements of the 2003 Licensing Act. 14 representations were received in total. There was a video MP4 which I believe will be shown today at some point. There have been no representations from responsible authorities. However, Environmental Health did recommend conditions to be attached to the licence. They can be seen at Appendix F. The applicant has accepted those conditions, and should the licence be granted today, they will be added to the licence. I can also advise members that the applicant has worked closely with the licensing department and with West Yorkshire Police, both prior to submitting the application, so the history of the premises has been known to the applicant prior to applying, and throughout the consultation period. Recently, before this hearing, the applicant did meet in person with licensing and with police to address the licensing objectives and to explain how she would deal with those. I believe that will be for the applicant to explain to you this morning. With regard to the next steps, when members determine the application, having regard to representations made, you may take such steps as you consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objective. These steps are: grant of the application, grant the application with appropriate conditions, exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities which relate to this application, or reject the application. Members are now requested to determine the application. In arriving at your decision, please have regard to the relevant provisions of the statutory guidance, licensing policy statement, and reasons must be given for any departure. Decisions must be based on individual merits of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. We'll just move on to questions. So I actually do have a question. So you've mentioned that the applicant's been working with yourself and with...
That's correct, Chair, yes.
So what I'd like to know is just a bit more information about in what way, what they've done, what they've presented. Have they presented any policies, outlined anything?
So, before the application was made, it was known that the licence had been revoked, or surrendered, should I say. The applicant did express an interest, several telephone conversations, wanted to know what the previous licence background was, what the issues were, which those were made, the fact that the police had made representations, for a review. That was done on the telephone. I sent over to the applicant all of that relevant history, noise complaints. There's a link in this report to the review, which didn't go ahead, but it is a public document. A couple of weeks prior to this hearing, the applicant did come over. We went through what the licensing objectives were. I haven't got it documented here, but it was recommended that the applicant come and express their history in the licensed trade. I believe that the applicant runs a bar in York, and that's a particularly problematic bar, which has been turned around and made acceptable, meeting the licensing objectives. And we basically had discussions between ourselves and the police about what the licensing objectives were, the concerns, which are mainly noise nuisance. Applicant seems to want to run the bar very differently to as it has been done, and she just basically explained her experience. It wasn't that she gave us a plan as such, but it was that she was going to go away and present to you this morning what her plans were in how she would run the bar going forward.
So, thank you for that. So just to kind of go in a little bit deeper,
Sure.
have you managed to confirm the status in York with the local authority, whether or not, you know,
Has it been run as a
way
a good...
what it was previously, and has it been turned around?
What I have managed to do, it had been suggested, it didn't form necessarily part of the representations that you have before you today. We receive a lot of emails, some of them are representations, some are comments. It was suggested that there were issues with the bar in York. I did email the licensing authority in York and asked about the applicant and about the particular premises. Were there any issues? The reply came back from the licensing manager at York, who said there had been some reports, however nothing was substantiated. The licence had been taken, I think it was 2016, up to present, and they had no issues. They were satisfied. Thank you,
That's
Chair.
great, thank you very much. Can I just move over to my colleagues if there are any questions? Does the applicant have any questions for officers? And do the objectors have any questions? Thank you. Can I now just move over to the applicant to present their case?
So my name's Nicola Hunter. I'm from York. I run at a bar called the Bootham Tavern currently. I took the Bootham Tavern on 7 years ago. It was a very problematic pub, and it had to change. They told me, the licensing officer, if it didn't, it'd be shut down. There was there in the Castlehour docks that were, they were awful pubs. So I took it on managed base from Heineken at the time for 18 months, and I run it through them, and I worked on a zero drugs tolerance. I was never scared to say to problem drinkers, if you like, not tonight, you know, move on. I had CCTV fitted to help, obviously, if there had have been an issue, because you can't 110% be certain when it's been run as badly as it had, that there wouldn't be issues. So we had CCTV put in place, so the police could attend at any time if anything happened. I have a challenge 25 in place, so it's not just an 18, because obviously underage drinkers and things like that, it's a big thing, you know. So I drill all my staff. We had a refusal log. We now have in place, because it's been 7 years, we have a rogues gallery instead, because we know the faces of the ones to say no to. And regards the silent woman, Slathwaite is the village where I'm from originally, and I remember the days of Keith Dyson, and it was such a wonderful pub. I understand it's been run down horrendously. I know a lot of the village people, you know, I'm 50, they're all of that age, and I understand, you know, the families that aren't the ones who you'd want to come in. And I understand that it can't open as what it was, because otherwise it'd be pointless, because it would just attract. So should the licence be granted, I will put in place the CCTV again, training with the staff in regards to Challenge 25, the refusals, you know, the children. At the Bootham Tavern, I'm not allowed minors in past 9 p.m. I would be happy for that to be earlier in the Silent Woman, because I believe that that's, again, been an issue. Also, when Anwar spoke, then he mentioned about sale of alcohol on and off the premises. The reason I was a bit blurred with that, because I wanted to question this now. I know there was problems with the beer garden to the rear. I don't need that beer garden, and I'm happy for that not to be there. You know, I would sooner park my car up there and just forget about that and close that area off, because essentially it's like an amphitheatre. I wouldn't like living where that was near. And again, at the Bootham Tavern, we don't allow glassware outside. We have a little terrace at the front that's all cordoned off in the summertime, and we have plastic glasses out there, but it has to be within those barriers. And this is with the smoking, and what I would propose at the front of the Silent Woman is a singular bench with a smoking bin outside there, but at no point do I feel like alcohol outside would benefit the Silent Woman in any capacity. Eventually I would like to move it on, should the licence be granted, to have a smaller food offer in there and change it to more, you know, there's the Where the Heart Is, there's all the history with it, to make it more of a locals, but get the tourists, you know, on the walkers and people like that are about a bit more of a cutesy country type pub is what I'm after with it. The live music that I put that for the whole day. Obviously it wouldn't be for the whole day, but it just gives me the variation if I was catering for well, the church is next door, you know, there's funerals and things like that. If things were wanted in the daytime, then I would put something on in the day if it was requested. But my general times for music, and this is what I do in the Bootham Tavern, are between 9 until 11, and there's a cut-off of 11 p.m. That's it. I've adhered to everything in York, you know, with the noise. We've put the soundproofing and things like that, and again, I'm more than happy to do things like that. I'm not interested in karaokes and big live bands and things like that, just maybe duos or single artists, you know, something for a Friday and Saturday evening maybe. I think that is about where I am with it. So just to change it from what it's been to what I feel it should be, more of a country nice pub where people can enjoy a drink as opposed to racket, but put the measures in place to prevent that. And that comes down to training, CCTV, working closely with the local police and things like that, and listening, you know, to the councillors and things, and what people want, you know. That's what I'd propose.
Thank you. If you can just... Thank you for that. That was really, really in-depth, and it did cover a lot of concerns. Quick question from myself is, have you spoken to any of the objectors and local people about their concerns? Have you had an opportunity to address them or see where they're coming from?
I went next door to the people that live next door because we did some work. I have the keys currently. So obviously there's a lot of damp issues. There's a lot of work needs to be done before it could be opened, whichever way. And I spoke to the neighbours to the right. I believe they've had not a very good time of it, and I just introduced myself and Kieran, who was doing some work for me. They were pleasant people, but as I said, I think they've had a bad time when the Silent Woman was open. I tried to reassure them, but I think until people see, they're going to be very dismissive of it. So that's what I was met with there. The villages as a whole, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of positive around it, you know, for it to be open. But Nabs Lane, not so much. So, yeah.
Thank you. Can I just ask Mike? Right, so just one last question. Do you keep a record of anyone that's attempted to come in underage. Do you keep a written record of that in York, where you are at the moment?
In the Botham Tavern, I do, yeah, because it's the refusal log that I have. We constantly ID. They laugh at me, you know, when I'm behind the bar, because I would sooner ID than not, and I always use the same reason. So if the police come in, you don't have ID, I'll be in trouble, and that's it. You know, if they can't provide ID, we just take the names down, if they'll give them, because sometimes they just wander off, and then we do it that way.
Also, in terms of the frequent flyer troublemakers, so, you know, keeping a log of them, how does new staff coming in, how will they recognise, you know, the frequent flyers?
So as I stated before when we would put the proposal over, I worked with a refusal log when I first opened it, but what I found the refusal log was harder. So what we have now, we have a rogues gallery, we call it. So I have pictures of people, you know, people that, and they're always the same. There's an estate further up, and that's where it all comes from. And we just put pictures of the faces, and above it's rogues gallery, and it's easy just to glance over. No customers can see it. You can just look if you're unsure. Sorry, not tonight. That's it.
That's great. Thank you for that. Just move over to my colleagues. Do you have any questions? Bellamy?
So, and if you're willing to do that. Did you say that you're not interested in having a beer garden at all?
I don't see the point where it's situated. It's a blind spot, and even with CCTV, it's asking for trouble. You know, there's the walls, and as I said, it ends up like an amphitheatre, and the people that are living up there,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to hear, and you can go out, you constantly be going out. Can you keep the noise down? Can you be quiet? And it doesn't matter how many signs you put round. So I believe that you would fail before you'd started with things like that. I'd just sooner it not be there and use it, as I said, to park my car. And that's it, and then have something to the front. But with no glasses outside, that stops, well, this is what I found at the Botham, it stops people congregating. If you can't take your drink out, they can't have the conversations and the, you know. So it's just to go out, have a cigarette, come back in, and that's it. Yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Questions from the responsible authority?
Not at this point, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Have we any questions from any of the objectors? I will just start with yourself. Can you just do a brief introduction?
Yeah, my name's John Ella. I'm a resident of Slithwaite. Obviously, going to the beer garden situation, saying you come to park your car there. Outside the Southbourne pub is a public footpath. It's the only public footpath on Nabs Lane. And if you've got smokers out there, how are you going to deal with children walking past, going into and from school, people in wheelchairs, people with prams? Because previously, that pub takes over the pavement and the road due to the history. How are you going to combat that? And because if you give them an inch, they will take a mile.
As I said there, I believe that if you see the Botham Tavern, that again, that's onto a main road, and it's just a pavement. And again, it's the only pavement straight down. Because I don't allow drinks outside, and previously they have allowed drinks, as I said with Anwar. That's why I left that as blurred. I don't need alcohol outside because I believe that's where the problems start. So if people are just going out to have a cigarette, that's it. They're just going out, and there's that little bit, you know, where the door is. That little bit belongs just there to the silent. The rest of it is pavement. And again, it could be barriered. I don't mind as long as it works. You know, I understand exactly what you're saying. And again, I refer back. That's why I don't believe taking drinks outside and allowing people to sit outside is beneficial. But you would have to have somewhere to smoke. And I've circled the entire building and looked. I don't want there to be on blind spots where I couldn't see what was happening. And that's that road up, you know, to the car park. Then there's the side of the building, you know, where the signage is there. I thought about there, but again, they're just blind spots. So just to have a bin right there would be...
And how are you going to control customers not taking the drinks out? Is there going to be somebody on the door?
Well, you simply tell them, and you train your staff. That's all I do in York. The tavern's a lot bigger pub than what the Silent Woman is, and it's a lot busier. And we have live music on, and it's a sport venue, and all the staff do, they go outside. Can you bring your drinks back in? If people refuse, you leave. You go. That's it. It's not a negotiation. I'm not licensed to have alcohol outside, so...
I understand what you're saying, but from previous experience, they've tried everything, nothing works.
Well,
so it's one of those that I believe when I see it.
I'm confident that it will, and as I said on this, if it didn't, and if it proved too troublesome for me, then I would have another conversation, and I would be happy to surrender things and not move on with it, because it's not what I set out to do. I don't want to upset a neighbour. Slathwaite's where I'm from, and I don't want to come in and to have all the same problems, because I understand it has been pretty badly run, to say at least. But the CCTV and stopping people going outside are two of the main things. And when people realise there are cameras, you'd be surprised how much it does stop people.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the gentleman next to you would like to speak.
Hi, I'm Javier Santana. I'm also a resident of Slathway. I hear what you're saying, and I hear you understand. I don't feel you do. You didn't experience this like some of us did, and I will talk about that later on when it's my turn to talk. But I was going to ask you, you are saying, well, what's happened before, even if a little bit of the bit outside belongs to the pub, is that your customers did not respect that. They've been drinking all day, they couldn't give two monkeys of whether that piece of land is yours or not. They'll take over the pavement. They will. They did before, and I see no reason why they wouldn't do this time.
Sorry, Javier. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. So in the application, it says on page 2 that there is a kitchen in the premises. There is no kitchen in the premises. And then on page 5, you said that you're going to be serving hot food from the kitchen in the premises.
This is what I propose to do. At the back of the pub, as you walk into the Silent Woman, to the left, you know, where the gentlemen's toilets are.
I've never been inside.
Yeah, well, inside, right at the back, it's another blind spot. To the left, you had a pool table, a pool rise. You go further down and you could get to the beer garden. That's where the gentlemen's toilets are. But just there, to the left, we've looked at that, and I believe in time, I'd like to petition that off and do a small, you know, commercial kitchen, and eventually get a food offer on. We would like to make that into a bit more of a store cupboard, you know, before we get to that point. That's where I'm going with that. So that wouldn't be immediately. That's a are moving forward. I'd like it on the licence so I could do that. Because I have tea rooms also in York that I've had for 14 years, and I make, you know, that's on Stonegate. We do everything ourselves in there, you know, it's all home baking. I enjoy cooking, and I believe Slathwaite is in need of somewhere nice with, you know, a bit of a roast dinner type place.
I think Slathwaite already has those places. However, that's not how I read it in the application, that it was a proposal for the future. That's not how it reads.
Well, it's a proposal.
But that's not how it reads.
Okay.
I have no other question, thank you.
Thank you. Can we just take... Do you have any questions? Right. We'll just take questions from the back row. Councillor Addy.
Hi, Nicola. I really welcome this positive, proactive and collaborative attitude you bring in. And I understand you've got a good experience of turning around a difficult pub. That's exactly the sort of thing we want in this venue. It's an existing pub. What I'd like to ask you is, will you be on site to bring these changes to bear?
Yes. Yes.
Will that be permanently? Are you moving back to Slathwaite, or is this going to be a primary location?
That's the idea. That's the moving forward. I'd like, you know, this is where all my family are and everything, so I'd like to come back over this way. There certainly won't be evenings, you know, where I'm not present, because you failed before you start. And that was the only way that I could do the Bootham Tavern, was to be there at all times, you know, to make sure, because you have a member of staff, and no matter how many times you say, you have to say no. People aren't always confident, and you have to give that confidence, you know, you say no. It's not argumentative, it's just not tonight. And that's my answer to that one.
As I understand it, that was one of the biggest problems in the previous situation, that they weren't confident. They were young, non-confident bar staff on without a licensee present. One of the biggest problems, which then led to a thing. So if you're going to be present, are you giving up your premises in York, or they're happily managed now and stuff separate to you?
My lease runs out on December the 7th. I currently have a manager in there at the moment, and I have some very good staff. So, if I'm given the opportunity to do the Silent Woman, while I focus on that, I'm confident in them to run the Bootham until I can close and say, thank you, pasture's new.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. Councillor McCarthy? Right. Thank you. Can I now... I'm going to invite the objectors to make a representation, but one objector in particular has asked that video footage to support their representation be played. I'm going to just read a disclaimer. The video does contain strong language and swearing. I have heard it. Although there's no images of anybody in there, viewer discretion is advised, and it's not suitable for children. Thank you. If we can just play the video. Thank you. Can I now invite the objectors to present their case? I will just point out beforehand that we have read all the objections, and I would advise you not to go into too much detail, and if there's anything new to add, if you can just basically stick to that. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Young. I'm a resident of Calf Hay, Nabs Lane in Slathwaite. I've lived in the property for almost 21 years with my husband, and we've brought up our 3 children there. We have been very happy in Slathwaite and in the Nabs Lane community. I would say that the Silent Woman has been an eyesore in the village for the entire time that I've lived there. Nicola said that it's been run down horrendously. I would say that's not quite true. It's always, in my experience, been a very run-down, chaotically run pub. It is frequented by what I would describe as hardened drinkers. These are not other visitors to the village, locals. It is a hardened core of clientele. My serious concern that I have in relation to a new licence being granted is that whilst the new licensee may be a different person, she will be hosting the core clientele. They will come back to this pub. They've gone elsewhere for the time being, but they will come back. You've heard from the video the sort of language and the sort of behaviour. It's a snapshot. It isn't all the time, but it is regular, and it's deeply unpleasant for the residents. We are being asked as the residents to have faith that a new licensee will conduct the pub in a different manner. What I would say is that the notice inviting objections to the application was properly displayed in the pub window when it was first put up, but then for reasons that I don't know, the notice fell off or was removed, and it was only when my neighbours, Linda and Frank, rang the council that the notice was put up again properly so that anyone who wanted to object to this application could. We're being asked to take on trust that the pub will be run differently. I would ask you, without going into the details of the submissions that have been made, to please take them extremely seriously. We are different people. We're not a cohort. We've all got different ages along the road, different lifestyles, different beliefs, different values, but we are all absolutely united in strongly opposing this application. I've been asked to say a few words on behalf of Linda and Frank, who live next door to the pub and who aren't able to be here today because of a medical appointment. I know that Frank particularly has had a very serious heart operation a few months ago. He wasn't expected to survive. He is recovering. He and Linda have suffered a great deal from the noise and distress from the pub and the behaviour of the clientele, more so than myself and my family. The comments that Linda has written down, which are brief, are these. The beer garden, which is adjacent to neighbours, has for many, many years been a hotspot for drug use and antisocial behaviour. The smell of cigarette smoke and drugs can be clearly smelt inside our home when our doors and windows are open. The beer garden is approximately 7 foot away from neighbouring property, and this makes it very unpleasant. Whenever karaoke, discos and live music are played, it can be clearly heard outside the pub premises, both back and front. I do appreciate that the applicant has said that she intends to close the beer garden. Again, we're having to take that on trust. Since the pub has been closed, it has been a breath of fresh air, quite frankly, for all of us in Nabs Lane. And it's just very traumatic, really, to think that it might be opened again. I think the strongest point that I would like the committee to take on board, please, is the fact that this pub is not needed in our village. There are 7 pubs and bars in Slathwaite, 3 clubs, 2 licensed occasional venues, and 7 restaurants with alcohol licenses in what is really quite a small but thriving village. The Silent Woman pub, in terms of its locale, is in a residential area. It isn't in the centre of the village. It doesn't attract tourists. It is in a congested point as well. It's on the corner of a road. It's a narrow pathway. There's no pathway opposite. And so anyone going to and from the junior school or going to and from the community centre, and I'm talking mums and children very often in the afternoons, have to go past the pub. My children have had to go past the pub virtually every afternoon during their childhood. And whilst the locals have not been, and I would stress this, not been personally unpleasant or nasty to any of my children or to myself, they create an intimidatory atmosphere because of the smoking and because of the drinking. It's just not nice. There are elderly people as well in the village, and they find it upsetting and intimidating. In the future, there are going to be yellow lines along Church Lane to try and prevent the double parking that currently seriously congests access to the main part of the village. There are not going to be double yellows in Nabs Lane. The natural effect of that new parking restriction is going to be to push people parking into Nabs Lane. The people who come and park tend to be picking up and dropping off children at the community centre for activities including after school, cubs, scouts, beavers. So we will have significant more car congestion in Nabs Lane. It's extremely likely. We also have a housing estate at the side. If the pub is reopened, it will absolutely increase the congestion on Nabs Lane and increase the danger to local residents, in my opinion. I know that Margaret, my neighbour who's sitting over there, would have liked to have spoken, but she hasn't complied with the rules in terms of making representations. She's asked me to speak on her behalf as well. She's in her 80s. She's been a resident of Nabs Lane since 1980, so I think she qualifies as probably the oldest resident that I know in the village. She has real serious concerns about the congestion and about the antisocial behaviour. I'm sorry that she's not able to speak to you today because she would paint graphic pictures, I'm sure, of what she's seen and heard over many years. A comment was made by the applicant that the village is in need of somewhere nice to have a roast dinner. As I'm sure my fellow applicants will say, it really isn't. We really don't need another food venue in the village. It can't possibly be required. I think it's suggested that a kitchen will be created and food will be made to create the impression that this will be a family-style pub for a different class of clientele. And I'm sorry, but I don't believe it for a moment. If you look at that pub, you wouldn't walk in it unless you were a hardened drinker. You just wouldn't. There isn't any suitable seating. I don't believe that drinkers would comply with the request not to take drinks outside. We're also being asked to take it on trust that the applicant will move to the village and will supervise and manage. For all of us, I would say, as residents of Nabs Lane, that's a huge leap of trust that we don't think the council should make. Those are my submissions. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Sarah. Can we just move on to Javier? Can you just make sure you're not repeating anything that's already been said?
Yes, I will. So obviously you've seen my submission. That was my video. I have hundreds of those. That's just a normal weekend. And that wasn't particularly late in the day. You clearly see that it was daylight. We suffered from noise for a long time. We actually had to move from our house. That was our house. We loved our house. We had to move out of the house because of the impact this pub was having on me and my partner. We received homophobic abuse. They wrote, excuse my French, gay wankers on our wall. And I have no doubt whatsoever that that was either the customers or the staff in the pub, because they learned that it was us complaining to licensing about the noise weeks after weeks after weeks for 18 months. Totally support everything that you've said in there. The rubbish in the beer garden, I hear, again, we need to take this on trust, that you don't want to use that as a beer garden, but we all know, everybody who lived on Naps Lane, that the amount of rubbish in that beer garden was only cleared before you submitted this application. It wasn't clear for years. There was always a skip on that driveway, always full of crap. God knows where that came from. So we know that I feel that was just done as a kind of, okay, you know, we're going to submit this application, we need to do this. Totally agree with the fact that we don't really need this pub. This is a residential area where people should be able to enjoy the quality of their life, and you intend to play music between 9 and 11, 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, leaving 9 hours for the residents to have no sound in the background, because everybody who is in Naps Lane, you know you will hear the boom, 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 boom of the music constantly. I happen to work from home. I couldn't concentrate. We have to ask friends to leave the house because of the noise. I mean, you couldn't make it up, and I hear what you're saying, that you do understand, but I don't think and I don't feel that you have experienced what we experienced. And like you saying, all this in trust, and I'm sorry, but I can't. And I ask the panel to reject the application for the benefit of the welfare and the health of the residents.
Thank you, Javier. Just before we move on to the next objection, I'm just going to take some questions first. So I've just got a question, and that can be answered by any of you, to be honest. In terms of the hard drinkers, you say they've gone elsewhere. Is there trouble elsewhere then?
I don't know, because they're not in Nabs Lane.
Okay. And in terms of the building, it's been empty now since December 22.
I think it's been December 23, actually. I was going to say it was said 22, but it was 23.
Right, okay. So basically it's been empty for several months now. When a building's empty for a long time, have you considered what that's going to attract? Have there been any issues with it being empty for such a long time?
Not that I'm aware of. Obviously, some use needs to be made of the building, but it doesn't have to be a pub.
Thank you. I'll just...
It does look an eyesore, but it has done for a long time. So I don't think the fact that it looks like an eyesore has anything to do with the fact that it's been empty. But I agree with you, I don't think anything has gone wrong because it has been empty. Quite the opposite. Everybody who lives on Naps Lane has had nearly a year of, this is good. And I heard from some of the residents that you're referring to, how they managed to have a quiet Christmas for the first time in years, how they managed to be sat in the back garden with the grandchildren without having to hear the swearing or to smelling the drugs or to see the drug dealing. That's what I'm hearing. So I can only hear good things about the pub being closed since December 2023.
Questions? Is the applicant a question?
In regards to the rubbish removal, I removed the rubbish because I met with Pradeep, the landlord. I went down to London to see him. He agreed a £20,000 buffer for things to be done within the Silent Woman, And one of the main things was when I went in the building, I've never seen anything like it. So we stripped upstairs, there's no carpets, there's nothing in any of the rooms, everything, there's wallpaper come away, and all of the back was taken away because my concern was pests, rats, things like that. So all of that was done not to shore my licence up, it was essentially to make sure the building was okay. Because, I mean, the thing, God knows how it hasn't had an infestation, you know, before that. So all of the old beer things, everything that's in there is out, it's gone. So it will be an absolute revamp of a pub. I have no intention, those were the things, I wouldn't want to open it as it was. You couldn't. It was too run down. Homophobic abuse that you speak of, my son's actually married to a bloke, so there would be nothing like that. Those are the furthest things out of my mind. I'm actually sorry that you went through that, but that's something that I would never tolerate. So I just wanted to make that clear for you. Thank you.
Thank you. We just take submission from John.
Hi, yeah, I'll try mine really quick because both parts have practically nearly said what I've gone through. It's for the abuse and the noise. It's not speaking to the staff or anything like that. It's the customers. Like we've all said, it is the same type of customers day in, day out. Why does your pub need to open 7 days a week from 11 in the morning to 11 at night when 9 in the morning, my apologies, when no other pub in Slaithwaite does? It is not.
Sorry, John. It looks like you're asking a question rather than making a representation.
Oh, yeah.
So we just stick to
My statement is this pub does not need to open that many hours a day, especially for 7 days a week. It's not needed. It's like you're trying to promote alcohol, and on your application it states that you are going to be open from 9 o'clock in the morning. For those 2 hours, what are your customers going to do? Is sit there and drink Coke? I do not think so with these customers that come into that pub. It does not need it. The pub is not required in a residential area. The times that we've had the council out, the times that I've had the police out to visit, all parties have stated this is a residential area and they do not know why a pub needs to be there anymore. It is pointless. We have all lived on Nabs Lane apart from ourselves when we've had to move away to get away from the abuse. It is unbearable. You do not know what we have been through. Nearly 2 years of abuse from those customers forcing us to move out from our home. It is not needed in this day and age. It is disgusting. And you're telling me that you are going to attract a different breed of customer. Everyone knows the Silent Woman for what it is. They say it's a local pub for local people. You look on Facebook, you can see, it must be outsiders that are coming in, locals, this, that, the other. You can just see how people write comments on Facebook of what type of customer it is. It is having to move home, for somebody in their 40s having to suffer homophobic abuse. This day and age, it is nowhere near. You do not know what we've had to tolerate. And I pray that this council does not grant that licence.
Thank you, John. I don't have any questions. Do my colleagues have any questions? Responsible authority have any questions?
No questions, Chair.
Thank you. The applicant, any questions or comments on that?
The only thing that I can say is I just reiterated, if you would have seen what the Bootham Tavern was like prior to me taking that on, you would have more faith. I know people say, you know, habits don't change. It's about the person to make those habits change. I changed them in the tavern. and I'm confident I can change them in the Silent Woman. And if I can't, if the licence was granted, then it wouldn't be something I would pursue, because it's not the sort of pub that I set out to run. And it's not in York, and it wouldn't be in Huddersfield. And that's it.
Thank you. Do we have any representation from ward councillors? Councillor McCarthy?
Thanks, Chair. So I haven't previously made an objection as a ward councillor to any licensing application before, but I felt as if for this one I really did have to do it, and it had to be heard at a committee, and residents had to be able to put forward their views, and responsible authorities and members had to be able to put questions forward. I'll try as hard as possible not to repeat anything that's already been said, because residents have much more eloquently described the issues that were at this site over a period of years. But there have been a very large number of serious incidents of behaviour at the site over the period at which I've been a councillor, up until the period at which the licence was withdrawn. This eventually led to an action plan, and then eventually the police requested a review of the application, and then the licensee surrendered the licence. Just a very quick overview of some of the views that have previously been mentioned. I know some of them have been made, but underage alcohol selling, drug dealing, abusive behaviour towards neighbouring residents, benches parked on the public highway, disturbance and noise, playing of loud music, again the abuse that happened towards neighbouring residents, antisocial behaviour. I think people that know Slough would have known the Silent Woman at the time I was a ward councillor as somewhere where you didn't really want to go to. It wasn't somewhere that I've ever been into, and if you ever went out for a night with friends or family in the village centre, this is probably somewhere that people would have avoided. I appreciate these issues were with a previous licensee, and it is positive to hear the applicant kind of mention some of the things they would do to mitigate some of the problems that came about. But I think the simple truth is that we can't just... There are going to be people who previously went to this location who are going to try and come again. So that's the reason why I put forward this objection today. I won't go into much more details. I think residents have already explained all the problems that have come about, but I would just kind of ask members to be extremely mindful of the situation, because I don't really want to be here in a year's time having to, with all the problems that have come about and they've not been dealt with or haven't been dealt with properly. That's all I really say. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Do my colleagues have any questions? Any questions from responsible authority? Does the applicant have any questions? So we just move on to Councillor Addy.
Hi. I mean, obviously this is a commercial premises and has been used as a pub. I'd like to hear at some point about the history before the previous, most recent landlord. And I think, as a commercial premises, this sounds like one of the best options we're going to have to resolve the issue. If this licence isn't granted with this licensee's experience, if you don't feel you can do that, then I would question the future of it ever being a licensed premises. I do welcome all the plans and proposals and the experience brought. Obviously, I don't know how much of that can be put into restrictions and enforced, but if some of that can be put into restrictions and enforced along with the environmental health, I think this may be the only chance to resurrect it as a pub. But I have heard and seen the videos, I have spoken to residents, and it was a disgraceful state. So it would only be with the strongest of restrictions that I would feel we could go forward with this as a licensed premises. It's a commercial building. If it's not going to be a pub, it will be in line for commercial premises, which will probably include something like licensing anyway. So I would like to see a positive future for the Silent Woman. It would only be with the strictest of restrictions I could ever imagine that working, but with the experience this lady brings, there might be the possibility. But I would like it to be monitored really closely, and you know, the soonest of issues, that could only be the way forward for me. I'd leave that with the experience of the panel.
Thank you, Councillor Addy. I would just make one point clear that any conditions that we do impose will be within the licensing objectives. I have a question, but it's not actually directed at yourself. It's basically, you mentioned the history. So are you aware of what the history was before the previous applicant, or is anyone else within the objectors aware of that?
We lived there for 7 to 8 years, and it was only since the previous applicant that there were some issues. So we moved in 2016, I think it was. And yes, of course, there was a problem. There was some noise, but it was manageable. However, since the previous licensee took on, that's when the big problem started. But we haven't lived there much longer than that. I know that obviously you've been there for much longer, so I really don't know what it was like before that.
So all that I can add is that Linda and Frank kindly gave me a folder, a dossier, if you like, which I'm sure they'd be happy for me to hand over for you to see, of all of the correspondence that they've sent to the various authorities about the various issues, just picking one completely at random. 27th June 2005, there's a letter about an impending licence transfer, so this is nearly 20 years ago. Please note that since 27th April 2005, when the current temporary licensees Mark and Sharon arrived, there have been a large number of late-night drink-related incidents, including fighting, rowdiness, 100 decibel plus disco music. We object, ... We object in the strongest possible terms to the granting of a permanent licence to Mark. There are numerous letters, you can see any or all of them. There have been periods of peace, short periods of peace, but there has been a chaotic running of this pub over many, many years. And what I would say is, despite the best intentions of the applicant, I can't imagine that any of the previous applicants said, I'm going to be really rubbish at this. Do you want to have a go with me? They will have all come to the licensing committee promising to do good, and none of them have.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have any questions? Any questions from responsible authority?
No questions, Chair, but I think it's maybe appropriate to comment from a licensing point of view. 2005 was probably when the Licensing Act was enacted. It's the 2003 Act. As I've mentioned in the report, the premises licence then was converted, and an application went in to extend the hours to address the lady's points there. It probably went to a licensing hearing then. There would have naturally been some objections to that. Clearly the licensing committee did grant the licence. I've been a licensing officer since 2009. I've only personally been aware of issues with the previous management, and a lot of those were environmental health, noise related issues, bad management, and I can say from a licensing officer point of view, I haven't handled all of those issues, although I have been involved with some of them. The applicant wasn't a suitable applicant, I can say that quite categorically. I think it's also fair to say that in my experience as a licensing officer, the applicant that we have here today has demonstrated a very professional approach to, first of all, doing the due diligence to find out what the issues were prior to putting this application in. And also the licensing responsible authorities, predominantly environmental health and the police, they're the main ones that have really, it's been crime and disorder and prevention of public nuisance that have been the main issues, as I say, particularly with the last applicant. I can't comment too much about prior to that, although from 2009 I've not personally been aware of any issues. But I can say that I've dealt with many licence applications and I've been to many panels. This applicant, I've no reason to say this other than it's factual, has engaged really well with us, engaged with the responsible authorities, and is here today. And you've heard what the applicant has to say. I can only comment from a licensing officer's point of view. I sympathise with the residents and can see they have suffered greatly. This is a new application, and if you were to grant the licence today, they have to meet the licensing objectives. There is a review process that could bring this licence back to panel, should you be minded to grant it. Obviously, that is a decision for panel to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any further questions or comments? Before we just go to summing up, I do have so I've just got a couple of last questions for the applicant. So if we were to grant a licence today, would you be amenable for it not to have drinking alcohol outside? So if we were to do it, would that be acceptable?
More than happy for that. No alcohol outside, more than happy.
Thank you. And the other thing is we just want a bit more information about the CCTV, so exactly where it will be placed and what the quality of that will be like. Thank you.
The CCTV I have in York is, I have letting rooms upstairs, and it's all down the side of the pub, outside, all to the front of the pub. When you come in, you've got a clear shot of somebody's face straight away at the bar. It's at both sides of the bar, it's at the back. There's nowhere in that pub you can go where there isn't CCTV and gut footage. The police, and it'd be the same that I'd want in the Silent Woman. The police can come along, they can put a little, either a disc in or one of the mini discs, and they can take recordings, and it's clear, it's good footage, and that's what it needs, where it's a clear facial shot, should you need, so there's no question, if there was any issues.
How would you stop people from going around to the beer garden? I mean, even if it's to smoke or it's to congregate?
This is where I say this is where I need to be present. I mean, if in York, busy days, EBA race meeting now. So EBA Saturday, I have Dorman on there, and I would propose Dorman on a weekend if there was any live entertainment, because safety with it just shores up you. And it also, if it's a busy day, it allows them to walk around and say, sorry, you need to come inside. And that's literally what I would propose to do in Silent Woman. I'd be walking round. If there were people constantly doing it, you would be asked to leave. But it would have to be monitored all the time. What I've found is people do eventually get fed up. You'll always get people who try, always, and they will try, but when you say, look, if it continues, you will not be able to drink in here anymore. That's it. So it's just a case of monitoring, CCTV, explaining to people as they come in, we didn't have a glass outside. Well, that camera tells me, because I have a monitor behind the bar, this is in York, and I can see different areas, and I just have to look up and see. So I even have them on my phone in case I'm not there. It's something that I do take very seriously. I don't think drinking outside the Silent Woman would benefit anybody at all. You can't stop smokers, but I do believe making a small area for them so it doesn't encroach, on Nabs Lane. Because if you put them to the back, there's the noise. If you put them to the side, you can't see. So that's my proposal for that.
Thank you. So I'll just move over to asking all parties if they'd like to summarise. I'll just responsible authority can do that. Thank you.
In terms of summary, Chair, the application's been submitted. It's for grant of a new premises licence. You've heard the history of the Silent Woman. It has been licensed pre-2005. Main problems occurred in 2023 with the last applicant licence had been transferred. That was called for a review of the licence by West Yorkshire Police. The applicant then surrendered the licence. It came before panel and they accepted that. This is a brand new application. You've heard from the applicant and you've heard from all of the objectors here this morning. That's our summary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would the applicant like to summarise?
I can say no more than what I've said. I just hope that you take on board my views and my good record that I've had in York over the years and my experience. I hope it counts for this. Thank you.
Thank you. And would the objectors like to summarise? If we just have one spokesperson, that would be great.
I would like the committee to take into account, please, that this isn't, that there's been recent problems. There is a long-standing history, over 20 years plus, of extremely bad behaviour, police involvement, drug dealing, underage drinking. This is a local boozer for hardened drinkers. And is it really a good look for the council to be relicensing premises that would have had its licence revoked but for the previous licensee withdrawing from the licence and resigning it? The fact that you've got a new applicant here should not, in my view, outweigh all of the other very strong factors that mitigate against an application being granted here.
Thank you. Has anyone got any further comments? Officers?
Hi, sorry, can I just clarify something that's just been said? So it was just stated that the licence review was submitted and it was going to be revoked. The licence review didn't take place. Revocation is an option at that licensing review, but members may have decided to allow the previous licence holder to keep the licence. They may have put further restrictions on it. So it wasn't automatically, it's gone for a review, so it's going to be revoked. And I just wanted to clarify that for members.
Thank you. So I would just like to ask everyone present if they felt that it's been a fair hearing. Objectors? Has everybody said what they needed to say today? Thank you. So we will now adjourn and discuss the application. It will not be done via telecast, and we will call you in once we've made a decision. If you'd like to step outside. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So at today's meeting, the panel considered both verbally and in writing information which outlined the application for the grant of a premises licence, Silent Woman Hotel, Nabs Lane, Slathwaite in Huddersfield. In reaching the decision, the panel had due regard to the provisions of the Licensing Act 2003, the statutory guidance issued under Section 182 of the Act, the Council's statement of licensing policy and the relevant provisions of the Human Rights Act. The panel also considered the representations received, which stated that the licensing objectives in respect of prevention of public nuisance, public safety, the prevention of crime and disorder, and the protection of children from harm. The above licence objectives will be achieved if the licence was granted with conditions. Therefore, in respect of the aforementioned application, the panel has decided the application be granted with the following conditions. No alcohol to be consumed outside of the building, the beer garden not to be opened, a clearly marked smoking area at the front of the building, CCTV to be in place internally and externally, no minors on the premises after 8 p.m. daily. The reason for the panel's decision are that granting the licence with conditions is in accordance with the following licensing objectives: the prevention of public nuisance, public safety, the prevention of crime and disorder, and the protection of children from harm. The panel have also taken into consideration representations and how the applicant seeks to address them, and that is with regards to the quality and location of the CCTV, immediate access to police, will address the concerns regarding hardened drinkers, the Challenge 25 policy, previous experience of running a licensed premises, which has been confirmed from the licensing manager in York. We've also taken into account the observations received from the Kirklees licensing officer in respect of engagement, queries regarding the history of the pub, and the issues concerned, and also the willingness to address them. In addition to that, the willingness to work with the police and neighbours and local authorities being taken into account, and that no alcohol outside will seek to address previous issues in the beer garden, and in addition, finally, the acceptance of environmental health conditions. Thank you everybody for your time today.